Welcome, Annie Collins here for Brutus Monroe. Today we're going to create this strawberry themed kind card. Let's go over the products I used to create this card. We are going to use our Aqua pigments. And let's go over those. We're going to use Fuchsia, Magenta, Yellow Green, and a touch of Turquoise. We're going to be embossing our images, so we're going to be using Raven Detail embossing powder, and this is a beautiful black, and our embossing ink. We're going to be using the Strawberry Social stamp set, and we're going to use the little berries on the top here, this little cluster on the vine, and this tiny one down here. And this sentiment, which reads, "So very kind of you." I know, cute and punny, right? Okay, so I went ahead and stamped and embossed and colored most of our strawberries. I will color one on screen so you can see how easy it is. But I've made double of each of these. So each image I stamped, embossed, and colored twice. So here they are. And I'm going to, like I said, do one on screen. So for our sentiment, I went ahead and stamped and embossed the sentiment on some pale pink cardstock. And I of course used the same Raven Detail embossing powder. So I'm going to go over quickly our rest of our components. I have a A2 Not Your Mama's card base. I have Kraft Cardstock, some pattern paper, and this little piece of cardstock here. It's left over from my previous project. I'll link it below for you so you can see it. It's the bendy card. It's a piece where I use Chroma Glaze through our new basket stencil on Kraft Cardstock. So I just cut it to create our little basket. So here's this little scrap of our Aqua Pigment cardstock. This is where I'm going to stamp and emboss so that we can watercolor. I have my stick and stamp mat in my stamping platform, and I'm just using it because I only have this tiny little piece here to stamp one strawberry on screen for you. And I'm sticking it onto the stick and stamp mat. I'm using the magnets just to hold the mat in place and not, putting the magnets in the way. So I forgot, I took it off and I'm going to flip it because I forgot to put my anti-static powder on there, and then I'll get embossing powder everywhere. So I just flipped the cardstock, two sides. So I flipped the cardstock, did my anti-static powder. How we're going to stamp it again, and it should come out better, because if I didn't do that I would end up with embossing powder everywhere. Alright, so I'm going to ink up again my image. I'm going to stamp it. I'll do it twice so I have a nice crisp, very juicy image. There we go. And now I'm going to remove it from the stick and stamp mat. I'm going to keep my stick and stamp mat to the side, but I will remove my platform out of the way. Okay, but I place it here for a second. I'm going to move it out of the way because I'm going to bring in a piece of scratch paper so I can pour my embossing powder. And since it is a sticky mat, we don't want any of that embossing powder on our mat. Okay, so I'm going to shake off any of our extra embossing powder, funnel the rest back into the jar, and close it before there's any spillage. Once that's done, I'm going to bring in my heat tool, and we're going to emboss our image. So I like to heat from front and back to keep the paper from warping. And I'm working on Aqua Pigment watercolor paper. I don't know if I mentioned that, so I'm going to repeat it just in case. I get that all set, and it's all set when it goes from matte to this beautiful shine. Alright, so now I'm going to bring back in my stick and stamp mat. My paper's a little warped, but it holds, the stick and stamp mat holds it. I'm bringing in my Aqua Pigment palette here, and I'm placing that there, and I have all of our colors, little droplets on there. I already used it, as you can see from coloring my other images, but I just wanted to let you know what's on there. Alright, so I'm going to wet my brush in some clean water, and I'm going to brush clean water onto the strawberry. Just plain clean water. Then I'm going to dip my brush into the magenta and I'm going to just go all the way around the edges and underneath the leafy part of the strawberry and the stem. Then I'll color it in with the fuchsia. The magenta is slightly darker than the than the fuchsia, so I'm going to do that just to create our little shadow detail, you know, to contour our berry. And I'm using a really fine small brush. You can use any size you feel comfortable with. This isn't a large image, so this little detail brush works perfectly. So as you can see, it gets darker, and the more you apply, of course, the darker it gets, and that's what we want. And then we're just going to blend it together with the fuchsia. All right, so that's what we're trying to create, that contrast. We're going to do the same process, clean water, and I don't want my brush super saturated. I want it to be just wet enough to drop a little clean water into the stem and the leaves of here of our strawberry. I apply the yellow green, and then I'm going to mix a little bit of this yellow green with the blue to get a slightly, sorry about that, I dropped my brush, a slightly darker green with a little blue tint to it. That will create a little more depth, because I didn't have just plain green, I only had yellow green in my stash. So now our berry is all set, and that dries pretty quickly. So now I'm going to clean off everything here really quick. And normally I would let my pigments dry and use it on another project, but I want to show you this. I wanted to show you on screen how easy it is to clean a damp paper towel, and you're done. I place the cover sheet on my stick and stamp mat and move it out of the way. All right, so now we have all of our components here. There's a bunch of berries and all our pieces, and I'm going to fussy cut this strawberry. One, I don't have the coordinating dies that are sold with this. And two, even if I did, I would fussy cut it because I want a nice close on there, a nice close edge on there. I don't want any extra white because I want this to fill the basket. So I'm going to create a basket of berries. Okay, so this is pretty quick and easy. It's not a hard image to fussy cut. And there we go, we're done. So I'm going to remove all the garbage, and then we can start adhering everything. Let's get our water out of the way. So I'm going to use some Barely Art glue to adhere all our pieces. I'm going to adhere this piece of pattern paper, and if you're curious which pattern paper this is Fawn's from this Spring Fling. Yeah, from the Spring Fling collection. And I've die cut this with a die from my stash, just a little bit smaller so that I have a nice thick border all the way around with that craft. We're going to put a little foam adhesive across the on the back of our little berry basket, and all I've done here is use a rounded die. It's a rounded corner die, and then I cut it in half. That's all I've done. Okay, so now I add a little bit of the Barely Art glue, just mostly to the bottom, because on the top we want that little height because we're going to be tucking in our berries. And we want to create that little bit of dimension so it looks like it's a basket full of berries. So now we can start tucking in our berries. Some I will adhere directly to the cardstock, to the background, I should say. And some I will use some foam adhesive. And I just start building the larger ones on the ends, the little clusters, and I want some on the towards tucked in and some laying on top. So we're just going to keep moving these across, and this came together pretty quickly because the strawberry is an easy thing to color with the Aqua pigments and on the Aqua pigment watercolor paper. So it's super easy. You stamp them all, one shot, emboss them, repeat it, and then you can sit there and color. And it's so much fun to color with Aqua pigments. So relaxing. Okay, so now we're going to adhere this whole panel to our card base. Let's get this on here. Nice and straight. And then we're going to finish adding our more dimensional strawberries. So here we're going to add these little ones here. I'll add a little more adhesive. And then the one on the left hand side, I start placing it down, and then I remember, oops, I have to adhere my vine strawberry. So you'll see how I'll remove it quickly. That's the good thing about working with liquid glue. It gives you a moment to, you know, an adjustment time. So on this strawberry here, I have some foam adhesive on the berries themselves, but on the vine I will be using liquid adhesive. As soon as I get this last little bit here, just those tiny little pieces are so hard to remove the backing from. Alright, so now see I put little dots. You don't want a lot, although if you do get excess of the Barely Art glue to come out, you don't have to worry. It dries clear and it dries matte, which is what I love because I don't need any glossy glue showing. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and tuck these back in here. I'm putting my acrylic block on top just to make sure everybody sticks down, because those I am adhering onto the Chroma glaze. Alright, so I'm putting our last little berries, and then our last berry down here in the corner. I'm going to drop it right here in the bottom little corner, like that little guy fell out of the basket. Alright, for our sentiment, I have some foam adhesive in the back. I'm going to remove the backing on that, and I'm going to actually center it. I usually stick my sentiment, you know, to the left and to the right, but today I'm just going to center it. I think it fits better, and I like the way it is sat there. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring in some finishing touches with some sequins. And I found a little clay strawberry in my stash of little sequins. So I'm going to put that next to the word berry in the sentiment. So I'm just putting little dots of adhesive everywhere, and I'll use some red, it's like a deep rich red, and pink sequins, and then little heart sequins in pink, just here and there on a couple of the strawberries. And just finishing these off here. I'm just putting them throughout the berry basket. And then I'll just put 3 up in the upper right hand corner. One of the things being that little clay strawberry, and then 2 other sequins. And this card is basically done, just the finishing touches. And like always, these finishing touches of sequins are optional. If you're not into sequins, or you like enamel dots, or whatever you would like to finish it, you can. And if you don't like to finish them with these little embellishments, you don't have to. So our card is complete. So I'm going to go over one more time everything that we use. But I love the shine of that Chroma glaze showing up to the bottom, creating that basket. We have all that beautiful watercolor detail of our strawberries, and then being embossed adds so much texture and dimension. I'm going to gather all my supplies really quick. Excuse me. So we use our stick and stamp mat, Aqua Pigment palette, the Strawberry Social stamp set, embossing ink, and Raven Detail embossing powder, Aqua Pigments in Fuchsia, Magenta, Yellow Green, and Turquoise. But if you didn't catch anything or I went too fast, don't worry, I have everything always linked in the description box below. That takes you straight to the Brutus Monroe shop. Thank you for being here, and I hope you found some inspiration.